So this year was really exciting this past year around funding. I had a startup years ago, and there was so little funding dedicated to this marketplace that it was, to be honest with you, slightly frustrating. Everyone, we know people are throwing a lot into health tech, but specific just for all types of health. But what was really exciting is kind of looking at, the unmet needs that health and innovators are not meeting for this marketplace. So with that said, I'm going to introduce Alfred Poor, the editor of Health Tech Insider, who will really talk about how bring together some great people who are creating funding just for this market. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jill. Robots are a lot of fun, but now we're going to talk about the good stuff, money. So fortunately, we have two gentlemen up here this morning who know something about this and have their hands on some of the taps involved, and we're going to explore some of the funding. I'm not going to take a lot of time with their introductions, but they have fascinating positions and backgrounds, and I encourage you to take a moment and read about them in the program guide that you've got. But I've got Jody Holtzman here, who's the Senior Vice President for Thought Leadership with AARP. I won't confess to how many years I've been a member, but it's a great connection between health tech technology for the elderly and that's and then here.
You have to realize it's even better value with a multi-year membership.
Exactly, yes. I got a great hotel discount for my stay here. So, and on my right here, we have John Hopper, who is the Chief Investment Officer with Ziegler Link with their Age Longevity Fund.
Correct.
So, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this. Jody, let's start with you. So, AARP has a fund that they're developing to back health technology. Is that the case?
So for the last couple of years, since this thought leadership function was created, have to turn it on.
There we go.
There we go. Is that doing it?
Yep.
All right. Usually I have a big enough mouth. In the last couple of years, since 4 years, in fact, since the thought leadership function was created, we've been working with startups pretty extensively, and we're really up to a point where we do almost everything that a venture capitalist does except invest. So we run a pitch day, a demo day. We've had 400 applicants over 3 events. Our next one's going to be in May. And we've seen, half of our 30 finalists raise just under $50 million in venture capital. 2 of them have had exits, one of which was our winner in Boston in last May, was acquired by Google, Lift Labs. Another Wello was
Lift Labs, is that the one with the
right?
The
so
shaking
it's a technology that allows somebody with a hand tremor to feed themselves, and so the gizmo has a spoon or a fork that fits into it. The tremor, unfortunately, does not go away, but despite the tremor, the technology allows the spoon or the fork to stay flat, and therefore, for the first time, somebody can. So within a split second, with this or without it, the quality of life has fundamentally changed, and Google saw some potential there, and they acquired the company, which is good because as somebody working with startups, this was a company that really needed, better management. So anyway, we've seen all this activity, and we've said, our goal, the mission of my group, is to stimulate innovation in the market. And we've been hearing from the venture community saying, okay, if you're really serious about that, you can't be lying on the chaise lounge telling us to dive into the deep end of the pool. And so,
very cool.
To mix my metaphors, you got to put some skin in the game.
Yep. Sounds like a great program. So John, you've got a fund.
Correct.
And make sure I get this right, the Age Longevity Fund.
Ziegler Link Age Longevity.
Ziegler Link Age Longevity Fund. And it has a kind of a unique structure, a design behind it, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, very unique. Ziegler is one of the leading investment bankers in the not-for-profit senior living space, and Linkage is a group of 16 not-for-profit senior living providers, mostly in Ohio, but also Kentucky and Minnesota. And we came together and formed the fund, but the interesting thing behind it is the investors in our fund, each of our entities put in money, but the investors in our fund, we have 90 limited partners, 70 of which are not-for-profit senior living providers across the country. So literally from Maine and Vermont to California and all points in between, we have a number of actual providers in the senior living space. So we wanted to create this fund both to be able to invest in great new technologies to help aging in general, but we also use it as, for our investors use it, I should say, as a lens into innovation. They're all not-for-profits. They're providing great service to their aging residents, but they don't really have the ability to go out and keep a track on these different new technologies that are coming about very rapidly. And our fund is their lens into doing that.
And so one of the things I see from the wearable space is there's so many people out there who say, oh, I've got the greatest whatever, and it's going to solve all these problems, and then they get out in the real world and find out that they're solving a problem that's not the problem that people have. So one of the things I like about your design is that the groups that are actually going to use this technology are right there in the mix, saying, providing the feedback and saying this is on target or not.
Yeah, and before we'll make an investment, any of our portfolio companies, and quite frankly, we've broadened it to be just any company that we think is interesting, we'll set up what we call demos, but they're a little bit more detailed than that, with our investors. So they will get to see the presentation. We'll ask for 4 or 5 of them to do a beta or at least test it. We'll solicit feedback from all of them. It's not a determinative factor. We have an investment committee who's ultimately the fiduciary who makes the investment decisions. But that's a pretty big point. If the market says, wow, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, those are pretty big points. And if they say, hey, interesting concept, really cool technology, it will never be able to be deployed until these changes get made, that's really great feedback to give to the portfolio companies or the potential portfolio companies.
There's another aspect to it that is interesting on 2 levels. One, so you have built-in potential distribution. At the same time, as a fund, I mean, funds compete for startups, right? A good startup will have a couple of term sheets from multiple investors who want to be the lead. So as a startup, the startup is looking for value add from the potential VC. You bring a very unique, angle to that, which is we can put you into distribution right away and get, the voice of the customer, very quickly.
Yeah, I think our 70 not-for-profit providers, we haven't added up the total number, but they probably have over 1,000 different locations and well over 1 million seniors that they service either in across all spectrums from independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing, dementia care, hospice, and home health. So we really touch, our universe really touches a lot of different points in the aging continuum.
So one of the things, as I think about all this, is, we've lived through the dot-com boom and bust. We've seen a little irrational exuberance from time to time on investors' parts, and I'm looking back and seeing the numbers, going from one number I read, we've gone from in less than a year almost doubled the venture capital investments in healthcare, going from $1.5 billion to $3 billion, something like that.
Yeah, Rockwell just came out with new numbers.
Right. And so I'm curious, is there, clearly the medical and the health applications are going to be driving a lot of this technology, especially the wearables that we look at. Is there, a gold rush here? Is there a risk of rushing in and throwing money at just any old project?
Yes. Short answer is yes. We joke that everybody in Silicon Valley races to be second, and the problem with that is you have to have a first. And so, in the digital health space broadly, you've seen many firsts. What you haven't, and firsts being an exit, a big exit, right? Because that's what says, okay, the market is out there, the valuations are justified. There's good management, all those things, on the checklist in your due diligence about, a startup and its growth. In this space, that's explicitly focused on people over 50 or even older. You've had a couple of exits. For example, a company that was a portfolio company of Silos, which is a health-focused VC in the Bay Area. They had a company that was the first Extend Health. And they were the first company to have an online marketplace for health insurance. But the health insurance was Medicare related. Right, so they were going to go to an IPO, and before they could get to the chapel, they were bought up for $435 million by Towers Parent. That, to my knowledge, is the largest exit that was explicitly focused, in this case, on the 65+ space. There have been other exits, but they've been pretty small. And so, that's going to determine it. But I want to just add something here, and that is that LifeLongTech, with regard to people over 50, is more than just healthcare, and it's more than just the narrow, targeted opportunity, and it is an opportunity that's huge, but it is more than the opportunity that's focused on solutions associated with the physical decline of aging. So, for example, we've done work in the health and wellness space. There are categories that are explicitly focused on people over 50 or over 60, or over 70, but there's also all those things that are equally relevant to people over 50. So, diet and nutrition, physical fitness, sleep monitoring, right? Security, leisure beyond the health space. So once you take that broader view, actually it's the opportunities in those areas that are equally relevant that I actually think, from an investment standpoint, actually have the greatest potential upside.
I agree with that 100%. As a matter of fact, in our private placement memorandum, we specifically stated, so that all of our investors were clear, that the companies we're investing in could be exclusively for the 50 plus, but really all they need to do is have a strategic focus on the 50 plus. So I agree with Jody, if a great opportunity is if it's relevant at numerous points on the age continuum, but it has a strategic focus in the seniors, we'd love to talk to them.
Very cool. So shifting gears here a little bit, one of the questions that occurs to me is, do we need you guys at all? I mean, I was at 2 press events last night, and walking around to the booths, this one's got a Kickstarter campaign, that one's Indiegogo sold for, cashed out at 4 times what their target was. I mean, there's a lot of serious money being raised in this crowdfunding. Is that replacing the need for venture capital? And so, John, why don't you?
No, I think that's great, and I think it can work hand in glove in many cases, and there are certain instances where that's maybe more appropriate. But to go back to where we maybe started this, I think it isn't. If anybody looks at our fund as, well, they've got $27 million to invest, then they're not looking at it the right way. It's the value add that we bring beyond the money. If you just need a check, there may be better ways to go. You look at AARP, I mean, if you don't understand the value add that having AARP invest in you, I probably don't want to invest in your company then, because that's a pretty clear advantage. So we think we have value to add because of who we are and who our investors are, more importantly, and that's just something you can't snap your fingers and create.
Yeah, I agree completely. one of the challenges and one of the frustrations that we've had as has the industry is there's no shortage of activity. And but the dilemma or paradox is that you have a lot of activity, but you also see uptake, particularly at the consumer level, as opposed to the institutional level, being very limited. And so you see a lot of startups that actually initially approach the market as a B2C offering, only to realize, one, to build a brand really takes money. Two, how do you get into the distribution channels? And you also are dealing with VCs who have a bias, for the most part, against consumer brands. In fact, there's only one venture firm that explicitly is focused on building consumer-facing companies, and in fact their tagline now is consumer-only venture. And that's Maveron, which is Howard Schultz's venture fund. And they are focused on building brands. They're an investor, and in fact were an incubator for the company Lively. And then came back in a subsequent round along with Cambia Health. So the challenge is, how do you get traction in the marketplace? So those Kickstarter campaigns, all of that is key for young companies to at least have the capital to gain some traction and the proof points that an investor in a subsequent round would be interested.
I'm actually seeing instances now where Kickstarter and Indiegogo actually become a sales and marketing tool rather than a fundraising tool.
In fact, Lively did that initially.
Yeah.
So it's you've got your other sources of funding, but you go with those campaigns to get the buzz going, to get some excitement.
But let me just point out one of the other value adds that both of us bring, and that is the consumer. For AARP, I mean, our pitch day for startups is unique, and we struggled with this. Why put on another demo day? I mean, there's hundreds of them. Why put on another demo day if it's going to look like all the others? And then we realized, well, we have an asset nobody else has. We have the consumer. And so our demo day has all of what's typical for traditional demo days, including demo itself. And that is, startups get 4 or 5 minutes on stage, pitch their idea. There's a judges panel of venture capitalists that basically interrogate them and basically say, why are you the best thing since sliced bread? But then what we do that nobody else can do is we bring in AARP members and give them wireless voting devices. And so then the audience votes on whether or not what they saw is unique, whether or not it addresses a significant need from the perspective of the older person, and would they use it and or refer it to family and friends. That event alone, this is the first time that for the most part, any of our finalists actually got real-time market feedback. And it was shocking to them because all of a sudden they're seeing real-time, a bar chart, scale of 1 to 10, and they're like, what do you mean they gave me a 4?
Don't they know how great we are?
Exactly. And so now what we're doing is trying to bring that to scale and involve the consumer at a bigger level. And we're creating this thing where the working title is Catalyst, which we're going to be doing pilots focused around problem sets and the solutions and the companies providing those solutions to do actual in-home pilots and whatnot, and particularly with consumer-facing companies.
Very, very cool. We only got a couple minutes left. Shifting gears just a little bit, is there a company or a target application that you're particularly excited about?
There are a number. Generally, our fund is going to be within guidelines, but generally focused 50% on healthcare IT, 25% on healthcare services, and 25% on other. We've actually made 4 investments already, and they kind of cover a gambit of a number of different areas. We invested in a company called Prodigo that's a supply chain management tool, really would be used by our members in their institutional setting. But we spun that out from UPMC, the large hospital system in Western Pennsylvania. We've made investments in a care coordination company, company that's kind of disrupting the caregiver model for finding caregivers and being able to connect them with people who need care. And then we're really excited about an investment we made in a company that we need a better tagline, but they're called a post-electronic medical record wrapper, meaning that...
oh, be still my heart.
No, please, you can't use it yet.
Go with the acronym.
But basically, they've been built for the coming bundled payments, pay for performance world that we're going to be living in. And we're really excited about how they're being implemented at a very high level within either governmental entities or large providers, things like that. So we've got our hands in a number of different areas, is the short answer. And,
Yep.
and I think that's reflective of the fact that we weren't built to be a device fund or, or a consumer fund. We want to help aging across the continuum.
Very, very cool.
Within bounds.
So Jody, we talked about the lift. Any other particular companies or any segments that you think are particularly interesting?
Well, we've looked at, we have a report out that people can download. We've just updated it. It's called Health Innovation Frontiers. And we identify, and so here too, within healthcare, there's that whole category of things that have to be approved by the FDA. And we actually got sick and tired of hearing people, but who's going to pay for it? And actually, I have to tip my hat to Lori Orlov, who's in the audience, who had that initial reaction. And, hey, Lori. And we concurred. And the fact is that people are out of pocket for all sorts of things, from vitamins to, treadmills to all sorts of things that contribute to health and wellness. So why not these other types of products? So with that as the paradigm, we identified 9 different categories of health and wellness, everything from medication adherence and management to aging in place technology, care navigation, as John gave an example of, but then also, physical fitness, diet and nutrition, social engagement, emotional health, things like that, which are equally relevant, as I said before, across the age continuum. And across those, in aggregate, those 9 categories, we see a $30 billion upside revenue opportunity over the next 5 years. We just updated that number from 20 billion the last time we did the study less than 2 years ago. The fascinating thing is not every category went up. So something like medication adherence, which we had originally forecast at over 3 billion, is now about 1.5, but that's just a reaction to, reflection of what's going on in the market. So we've seen examples in every one of those, the categories of our finalists that have actually raised the 50 million, the roughly 50 million, cut across all of those. Care navigation is huge. Okay. And that's something actually that multiple VCs are interested in, and we're seeing a lot of activity.
Well, there's certainly a lot of money out there flowing into these companies, and at the same time, as you mentioned, there's a lot of money to be saved. A lot of inefficiencies, a lot of improvements in productivity in terms of improved treatment, diagnosis. I mean, there's lots of room for improvement, and it's very exciting to see a lot of these companies starting up to address a lot of those issues. And it's great, I think, the things that you guys are doing to help a lot of these startups get going and get a foothold. I'd also like to just remind everybody that our website, Health Tech Insider, covers a lot of these interesting products and companies. And so if you're interested, it's a free website. We have a free weekly newsletter. Please sign up. And
I just signed up.
Mm-hmm.
I did this week.
Excellent. Thank you. So I thank you both for,
yes,
John,
thank you.
for taking the
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill.
How cool is it?